Ornate gold accents gleam from the vast. Ornate gold accents gleam from the vast windows. Frank Woolworth constructed this opulent home to showcase his achievements to the world. The entrepreneur who transformed small change into a vast chain of hundreds of outlets. He adorned it with imported marble and intricately sculpted timber. He threw lavish parties for crowds of visitors drawn by intrigue, though they offered no true admiration. Hidden under the splendor, dark truths simmered that ruined each successive lineage. Insanity, self-destruction, isolation, amid chambers meant for victory. One of his daughters crumbled beneath the burden of his grand designs. His granddaughter frittered away fortunes and passed away destitute, intended as a symbol of prosperity. The residence morphed into something far grimmer, a snare, a mausoleum, a spot where aspirations faded away. Frank Woolworth entered the world on April 13, 1852, in Rodman, New York, a modest agricultural hamlet in the state's northern reaches close to the Canadian frontier. His father ran a modest plot of land that barely kept the household above bare survival. The earth yielded little. The harvest window was brief, the labor unending, and the gains slim. The boy despised it all. Frail from youth, he suffered frequent lung ailments that confined him to bed for extended periods. His folks envisioned no prospects for him save light duties he struggled to perform. Debt plagued the household without respite. Frank donned ill-fitting cast-offs from others. He observed his mother eking out scant provisions. The sting of destitution scarred him profoundly at an early age. At age 16, he abandoned the fields for a clerk's role in the nearby town of Watertown. The job offered no pay for its initial 3 months, and training stint meant to impart sales fundamentals in exchange for unpaid effort. He bedded down in an attic space over the shop and subsisted on whatever the proprietor's spouse cooked up. He faltered initially. Illness struck once more. He slunk back to the homestead, crushed and shamed. That ordeal solidified his inner doubts. Manual toil wasn't his path. Any path forward, if it existed, lay in trade. In 1873, he ventured forth anew. A different shop, another unpaid stint. This round he persevered. He mastered display setups, customer dealings, and stock monitoring. He uncovered a knack for gauging desires and showcasing them effectively. Yet skill alone brought no progress. Owners treated assistants like replaceable hands. Woolworth toiled for years sans real raises or steps up the ladder. He witnessed inferior workers advance via kin ties or status he lacked. Entering his late 20s, his wages scarcely covered basics. He wed Jenny Wrighton in 1876. The couple settled into humble leased quarters. Dreams of children clashed with his inability to provide. Resentment gnawed at him. Intelligent and diligent, he'd outwork peers by far. It counted for naught. The era's inflexible hierarchies locked folks like him in their stations. All that shifted upon encountering William Moore, a Watertown trader open to innovative sales approaches. Moore knew of a Michigan outlet dumping surplus stock via a nickel-only section where every piece went for precisely 5 cents. The notion captivated Woolworth right away. Back then, shops stashed goods out of reach. Patrons requested clerk assistants to fetch products, then haggled over costs, tailored to perceived buying power. It dragged on, felt awkward, and wasted time. A set-price display upended the norm. Shoppers viewed items up front. Prices were transparent from the start. Bargaining became obsolete. In February 1878, Moore allowed Woolworth to test it. They placed a 5-cent display up front, labeling everything at that uniform rate. Woolworth organized the wares thoughtfully, ensuring they tempted and invited touch. The setup cleared in mere hours. Buyers embraced the straightforwardness and low tags. Moore took note, but held back. A single strong day hardly validated a full-fledged operation. Woolworth envisioned greater potential. If a lone table thrived, a shop full of consistent low-cost wares could excel. Success hinged on sheer quantity. Move plenty at narrow markups and earnings would build. He persuaded more to back a trial. Come June 1878, they launched a dedicated 5-cent outlet. In Utica, New York, Woolworth filled shelves with everyday essentials, all pegged at 5 cents. Sewing needles, yarn, cookware, playthings, cleansing bars. The venture collapsed after just 3 months. Utica proved a mismatched locale. The spot was suboptimal. Woolworth had erred in selecting sellable stock. At 26, Woolworth had just witnessed the downfall of his initial business endeavor. Many would have gone back to being a clerk and given up on their ambitions. Instead, he approached Moore for backing on another try. Moore consented, though under tough terms. A reduced budget, no paycheck for Woolworth, who would pocket any earnings but cover extra losses himself after the starting investment. Come February 1879, he launched another 5-cent outlet in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. This time he picked the spot with greater care. Lancaster boasted a reliable population and consistent pedestrian flow. Positioned on a prominent corner, the shop gained excellent exposure. Right away, he broadened the idea, adding a section for 10-cent goods alongside the originals. This expanded 5 and 10-cent setup provided greater selection, drawing in shoppers ready to pay a bit extra for superior products. Success came gradually, rather than in a flash. He figured out which items moved consistently, and which fads required swift restocking. Profits were slim. A nickel sale might yield just a cent or so, but patrons flowed in without pause. By the next year, the Lancaster outlet brought in enough gains to support growth. In November 1880, he debuted a follow-up site in Scranton, Pennsylvania, followed by one in Harrisburg. All adhered to the identical model: set prices, displayed goods, emphasis on quantity over fat margins. It thrived by tackling genuine irritations in U.S. shopping. Blue-collar households resented haggling with snooty salespeople who presumed their limited means. The 5 and 10 spots leveled the field for all. A nickel held the same value, no matter the buyer. By 1886, Woolworth ran 7 outlets spanning Pennsylvania and New York. He'd honed the approach into a precise system. Site selection proved vital. Corner spots with strong traffic far outpaced those tucked inside. Arrangement inside mattered too. Items needed to be on view and easy to reach, yet sorted logically to avoid overwhelming shoppers. He forged ties with producers, ready to craft products tailored to his budget tiers. Bulk orders let him bargain prices down, ensuring viability for 5 and 10-cent sales. Growth continued into the 1890s. Outlets sprouted in Boston, Philadelphia, and, at last, New York City. Every edition stuck to proven methods: uniform design, pricing scheme, and stock categories. The realm rose on nickels and dimes, yet those modest sums piled up into substantial riches. By 1900, stores under Woolworth's direct control pulled in hundreds of thousands yearly. He'd amassed wealth by catering to the everyday worker he'd once resembled. Still, affluence couldn't wipe away recollections of hardship or the bite of societal snubs. He relocated his family from Brooklyn to pricier spots in Manhattan. Gifts of jewels and elegant attire went to his wife. Staff came on board. Yet elite lineages saw no shift in their judgment. He remained trade, a mere retailer who'd struck it rich. His gains stemmed from pocket change, not rails, finance, or legacy estates. Such lines defined the inflexible class ladders of the Gilded Age. Meanwhile, the business setup demanded streamlining. Over 3 decades, his operations had grown via a jumble of alliances and solo holdings. Some shops were fully his. Others shared with kin or ex-staff who'd joined expansions on his reliable blueprint. In 1911, he engineered a consolidation into the F.W. Woolworth Company Incorporated, folding in 5 rival 5 and 10 operations under one roof. The resulting firm managed 596 locations, with sales topping $60 million annually. Woolworth held the largest stake. Now 59, the one-time unsuccessful rural youth stood among America's richest. His net worth surpassed $65 million, over $1 billion in today's terms. Yet cash failed to secure his deepest desire. Entry into New York's entrenched upper crust, the metropolis's legacy clans enforced unyielding tiers that fortune couldn't breach alone. Figures like Astor, Vanderbilt, and Morgan gatekept elite societies, top galas, key invites. They noted his fortune, but kept a deliberate remove from his roots. He got nods at select gatherings as a novelty, the ___ quote, _1__, who'd risen from laborers' coins. Those overtures carried a patronizing edge, sharper than flat dismissal. Woolworth's initial home in Manhattan was a modest townhouse on Fifth Avenue. Decent enough to indicate affluence, yet nothing that truly turned heads. He outfitted it with lavish furnishings and organized dinners that drew in fellow entrepreneurs, though seldom any prominent figures from high society. Jenny, his wife, showed up to these occasions with evident reluctance. She had no desire for this existence, with its upscale locales, household staff, and endless need to dazzle folks she neither cared for nor who respected her spouse. She far preferred serene nights spent with her girls over the obligatory social displays Frank insisted upon. The daughters found themselves torn amid their parents' opposing outlooks. As the oldest, Helena possessed striking beauty and sharp intellect, yet she grew ever more delicate in spirit. Edna remained more subdued, inclined to go along with expectations. The baby of the family, Jessie, already displayed the determined nature that would mark her future. Frank hoped for advantageous matches for his daughters, not so much out of romance, but to forge the elite ties that could shatter the walls blocking his path. He saw their unions as calculated steps to merge his retail wealth with long-standing aristocratic lineages. This strain took a toll on each of the three. Helena, in particular, battled the weight of her father's demands. With her innate sensitivity and creative bent, traits he dismissed as flaws requiring firm guidance and a suitable wedlock to mend. By 1910, Woolworth decided his current townhouse fell short of his goals. The spot was fine, but the building itself was plain. What he required was a statement that would compel New York's elite to recognize him as an equal on his own conditions. His mind turned to erecting a true palace, not merely an oversized dwelling, but a domicile to eclipse America's finest estates, rendering even the Vanderbilt properties seem understated. The concept gripped him more firmly each day. He devoted time to jotting preliminary sketches and amassing images of grand European chateaux. He delved into Italian Renaissance designs, French Baroque flourishes, and Gothic touches adaptable to a U.S. home. Colleagues in business considered him fixated. The firm was booming, demanding his focus on growth strategies and rival threats. Yet during board sessions, Woolworth filled the edges of balance sheets with architectural notations. In 1911, the year he unified the company, Woolworth committed to the venture. He would construct his palace, sited on Fifth Avenue, New York's premier avenue. The architecture would blend his favorite European influences. Expense meant nothing. He sought an architect capable of realizing such a bold concept, one versed in monumental works and unbothered by a patron insisting on flawless execution throughout. Cass Gilbert stood out as the ideal pick. Gilbert had crafted the Woolworth building, the 60-story tower set to claim the title of world's tallest upon its 1913 finish. That edifice served as Woolworth's alternate legacy, a business landmark etched with his name eternally. Their collaboration on the high-rise had gone smoothly. Gilbert grasped Woolworth's craving for splendor while shaping it into practical design. He never belittled the notions of a self-made tycoon as mere delusions. Instead, he absorbed them, polished them, and produced results. Early in 1912, Woolworth consulted Gilbert on the residence. He envisioned a blend of French Renaissance and Italian palazzo vibes, accented by Gothic features akin to the skyscraper. It ought to evoke Europe while radiating distinctly American drive. Gilbert absorbed Woolworth's explanations, examined the gathered photos and drawings. He saw at once this would surpass any personal home he'd tackled. The proportions Woolworth imagined outstripped New York constructions in years. By spring 1912, they settled on the plot. Woolworth acquired land on Fifth Avenue, between 81st and 81st Streets. The area provided ample room for the expansive structure and gardens he pictured. It already housed some of the metropolis's richest clans. Gilbert set to work on blueprints. The edifice would span 5 stories plus utility areas below. Its exterior would boast intricate stone carving and expansive panes to bathe rooms in daylight. A majestic portal would lead to a marble stairway ascending several levels. Woolworth scrutinized each plan with relentless scrutiny. He probed ratios, called for alterations in ornamentation, pushed for tweaks that Gilbert occasionally deemed superfluous, but accommodated regardless. After all, the financier footed the bill for his precise specifications. Projections for outlay rose with refinements. From an initial $1 million sum, it swelled to $2 million, then $3 million. Woolworth remained indifferent. Frank Woolworth possessed wealth, far beyond what he could ever use up. This residence would stand as his enduring mark on the world, outlasting any chain of stores he might build. He demanded the best materials money could buy, no matter where they came from. Exotic marbles sourced from Italy and France, timbers harvested in South America, ornamental features sculpted by European artisans who upheld ancient methods from bygone eras. Anything unavailable domestically would simply be brought in from abroad. Cass Gilbert fretted over the schedule and supply chain challenges, gathering resources across continents while overseeing the build in the heart of Manhattan promised holdups and headaches. Yet, Woolworth was adamant. The project must unfold precisely as envisioned. Timeline slips were tolerable, but any skimping on excellence was out of the question. Toward the end of 1912, building preparations were complete. The plot had been leveled, and groundwork laid. Laborers would soon flock to the site in droves as operations intensified. The grand home, destined to validate Frank Woolworth's stature to a doubting society, was on the verge of becoming reality. Still, as work kicked off, early indicators emerged of strain, tearing at the Woolworth household amid his grand designs. Helena's mental well-being was slipping. Jenny retreated deeper into isolation. The lavish estate, meant to solidify their standing in high society, rested on unstable ground that was already giving way. Groundbreaking occurred at the start of 1913. Crews swarmed the Fifth Avenue location, their ranks swelling each week with the scope's growth. Digging out the base came first. The sturdy Manhattan schist offered reliable anchoring, though the digging demanded precise planning to spare adjacent buildings. Woolworth showed up at the site nearly every day. He'd pull up in his driver-operated vehicle, emerge dressed in lavish attire that looked comically out of place amid the dust and machinery, and pore over particulars for hours. The crew got used to spotting his figure and bracing for the sharp inquiries that erupted if standards fell short. Cass Gilbert sought to temper his patron's hands-on approach with tact. Certain suggestions proved helpful. Woolworth had a keen eye for balance and harmony, but his non-stop oversight and perpetual tweaks were bogging down the pace and irking the on-site teams. Throughout the spring and summer, the ground-level walls climbed steadily. Laborers stacked enormous limestone slabs for the front, each one hewn and placed to Gilbert's exact blueprints. The rock, hailed from Indiana quarries, selected for its hue and resilience. By autumn, inner rooms started forming. The foyer boasted a majestic stairway made of pristine marble shipped from Carrara, Italy, the very kind Michelangelo employed for his masterpieces. Woolworth wouldn't settle for less, even with the steep price and the long wait for extraction and transport. The slabs showed up in shipments spanning late 1913 into early 1914. Accompanying them were Italian masons, experts in handling the stone. They fashioned railings and etched embellishments that elevated plain steps into artistic masterpieces. Woolworth observed their labor with rapt attention. These artisans wielded expertise honed over lifetimes. Their movements carried the assurance of long apprenticeship. He held a deep regard for such mastery, likely because his own riches stemmed from grasping what true excellence appealed to shoppers. Crafting the central staircase devoured several months. Every tread demanded perfect flatness. The heights of the risers had to stay consistent. The railing needed braces set at precise spacings, with matching carvings on either side. The dance hall was planned to dominate much of the second level. Gilbert outlined dimensions of about 60 feet in length and 40 feet across. The overhead vault soared 20 feet high, adorned with intricate molding and gold accents designed to shimmer under enormous glass, Diao Dong. Woolworth pictured the space hosting scores of visitors with ease. He dreamed of elite soirees that would secure his clan's place in the city's upper crust. It had to dazzle so profoundly that even the snobs would concede its splendor. Ornamental molding commenced in the spring of 1914. Talented plasterers crafted complex overhead patterns, blending geometric shapes and botanical themes drawn from Versailles-style chateaus. Progress crawled along. Layers had to set fully before layering on more. Woolworth chafed at the drawn-out process. Gilbert stressed that haste in such artistry bred flaws. Hastily set plaster would fissure. Sloppily rendered features appeared rough when scrutinized. Superior work demanded patience. The patron grasped this in theory, but wrestled with the weight on a personal level. Each passing month on the build meant enduring another in his modest row house. One more cycle of gatherings where he lingered on the edges, not commanding the spotlight. The oak wainscoting for the study and formal eating area originated in England. Oak paneling featuring intricate Tudor-inspired carvings that echoed Gothic elements without direct imitation. These panels shipped in sequentially marked pieces, meant to be pieced together like elaborate 3D puzzles. Assembling them demanded skilled artisans versed in age-old joinery methods. Any contemporary approaches involving nails or screws were strictly prohibited. Instead, the sections interlocked via mortise and tenon connections, mirroring those used by builders from the Middle Ages. The dining area was laid out to host elegant meals for 30 to 40 people. Woolworth insisted the dining table could stretch to accommodate 50 when required. His goal was to throw events that could match or surpass the Vanderbilts' lavish affairs. A butler's pantry linked the dining space to the kitchen, providing storage for the fine china, crystal, and silverware Woolworth was busily sourcing from European vendors. He amassed tableware for 100 diners, despite never having entertained more than 20 in a single sitting. The third and fourth levels housed the family's personal spaces, sleeping quarters for Woolworth, his wife, and their daughters, plus accommodations for overnight guests following grand soirée. Every bedroom came equipped with its own bathing area. a cutting-edge amenity absent from many established estates. Woolworth's master suite claimed a generous slice of the third floor, encompassing a bedchamber, a secluded lounge, and a dressing zone fitted with bespoke closets. These areas embodied his desire for ease and authority. He directed that his sleeping room boast several windows facing various angles. He disliked any sense of confinement. The space demanded daylight at all hours and breezy airflow in summer. The adjoining bath showcased French-imported fittings, an expansive tub hewn from one solid marble slab, basins with gilded taps, and flooring in patterned tiles drawn from Gilbert's take on Italian Renaissance motifs. Jenny's quarters adopted a calmer vibe. She had requested serene retreats distant from the bustle of receptions. Her private lounge served as a haven during intense social stretches. Gilbert positioned her suite toward the back with vistas of the garden instead of the roadway. For Helena's room, her father lavished extra care. He aimed for elegance that would nudge her toward the polished demeanor he felt she should cultivate. The walls bore custom-painted landscape frescoes. The furnishings consisted of antique French items he had selected just for her. By mid-1914, the outer shell stood mostly finished. The 5-story limestone exterior soared upward, accented by elaborate window frames and sculpted cornices. The front door displayed engravings, blending French and Italian touches. Onlookers paused to gawk at the rising edifice. Inside, progress stretched into 1915. Electricians threaded cables across the entire residence. The setup would illuminate every corner, a fresh innovation for upscale homes at the time. Woolworth sought to blend cutting-edge tech with time-honored artistry. The heating setup called for meticulous design. Steam radiators went into each room. Units behind ornate screens that complemented the decor. These covers let warmth flow freely while upholding the unspoiled look of the Renaissance-style interiors. Down in the basement, the kitchen spanned lofty ceilinged rooms with ample windows for daylight. State-of-the-art equipment filled it to handle feasts for crowds. It included several ovens, expansive counters, and cabinets for stockpiling ingredients to serve scores of people. Servant areas dotted the basement and top floors, quarters for the chef, cleaners, chambermaids, butler, and the rest of the crew needed to run such a grand home. Woolworth envisioned hiring no fewer than 15 permanent employees. In 1915, the rear garden got its due focus. Designers crafted symmetrical French-inspired layouts. Boxy flower plots edged with clipped shrubs, pebbled walkways linking zones, and a modest fountain as the highlight. Woolworth rejected young plants in favor of full-grown ones. He preferred an instant air of maturity over years of waiting. Mature trees were relocated there at high cost. Come early 1916, the mansion neared its end. Finishing touches fell into place. Locks and handles went on doors. Curtains draped the windows. Pieces from Woolworth's long-curated collection were positioned in their destined spots. The project's final price tag surpassed $5 million, which, when adjusted for inflation, equates to more than $100 million today. It ranked as one of the priciest private homes ever erected in the United States. Frank Woolworth toured the finished spaces, a blend of pride and weariness washing over him. The endeavor had demanded 4 full years from him. At age 64, his vitality was fading. The grand edifice he'd erected to affirm his stature had left clear marks of aging on him. Yet, it stood complete. This testament awaited the elite social circles that had overlooked him for years. At last, they would confront his accomplishment. In March 1916, the Woolworth family settled into the mansion. Pieces of furniture stored away for months found their places in rooms crafted to showcase them. Artwork adorned the walls while Persian rugs draped over the marble flooring. What had once been mere blueprints and building debris transformed into a home meant for daily living. Emptiness struck right away. The vastness that impressed in designs turned stifling in routine existence. Chambers built for crowds of visitors resounded hollowly, with just one occupant. Jenny traversed the polished corridors, her sense of solitude growing sharper with each footfall. She had never desired this dwelling. The building phase had strained her, as she observed her husband's fixation on minutiae amid fraying family bonds. Now they inhabited a shrine to his drives, which resembled an exquisite cage. During the building years, Helena's health had deteriorated further. She grappled with ailments physicians then labeled as nervous afflictions.
Today's experts might diagnose it as depression and anxiety, or even bipolar disorder. However, in 1916, such conditions lacked clear comprehension and were frequently concealed by relatives, viewing them as disgraceful.
Frank denied the depth of his daughter's torment. He maintained that she required only stricter guidance and fitting societal polish. The artistic frescoes in her sleeping quarters aimed to cultivate elegant tastes. Rather, they appeared to taunt her failure to fulfill his standards. Woolworth organized an elaborate debut gathering for May 1916. Invitations went out to New York's key influencers, the Astors, the Vanderbilts, leading financiers, business tycoons, arts notables. This event promised to compel their admiration for his creation. Replies left him let down. Numerous rejections came wrapped in courteous regrets. Acceptances carried the familiar air of superiority they'd always shown the shopkeeper. Attendees came driven by intrigue to inspect the 5 and 10 palace, not to celebrate its builder. The affair unfolded on a balmy night in mid-May. Around 200 visitors trickled in across a few hours. They gazed in awe at the marble grand stairway and the ballroom's ornate golden dome. They praised the Louis XIV furnishings and Renaissance canvases from Italy. Compliments flowed toward Woolworth on his discernment, yet understated hints underscored that refinement and inherited wealth remained worlds apart. Frank navigated the assembly, enduring accolades that rang false. He'd poured $5 million into forging a residence that demanded respect. In truth, he'd fashioned a lavish backdrop for the persistent barriers that had sidelined him socially. Jenny remained at his side when protocol demanded, then withdrew to her secluded quarters at the earliest opportunity. She detested such affairs, the contrived grins, the guarded exchanges, the awareness that visitors judged every detail. Helena made a short appearance but soon felt swamped by the throng and clamor. She slipped away prematurely, seeking solace in her frescoed retreat, where the wall art seemed to hem her in. The night concluded with courteous farewells. Visitors expressed gratitude to the Woolworths for a splendid occasion. Then they motored back to their ancestral estates, assured that no fortune from commerce could secure true acceptance. Alone in the vacated ballroom once the final guest had gone, Woolworth lingered. Staff bustled about, clearing crystal and china. In others' views of him, in the ensuing days, routines took shape that would define Woolworth's remaining years. He commuted each day to his office, overseeing the thriving conglomerate's growth. Evenings brought him back to an overly spacious abode for its inhabitants. He dined ceremonially in the hall meant for 30, though typically just 3 or 4 gathered around the vast board. Long simmering household strains grew starkly evident in this fresh environment. Summoned and sundry remedies tried. None summoned and sundry remedies tried. None yielded lasting relief. Edna worked tirelessly to keep tensions from boiling over between her father and her increasingly delicate sister. As the family's peacemaker, she diffused arguments and offered explanations to ease the strain. The emotional drain left her weary, yet she knew it fell to her to keep everyone united. Meanwhile, Jessie, The baby of the family was starting to push back against authority. She chafed at her father's efforts to dictate her friendships and future husband. Instead, she yearned for independence in deciding her partner and lifestyle. Tensions between father and daughter escalated, turning sharper and more acrimonious with each clash. Frank Woolworth threw himself deeper into his business to escape the chaos. His stores offered straightforward measures of achievement: rising sales, healthy profits, and growth into fresh markets, rewards that his relatives could never match. Yet the grand residence devoured funds at a frightening pace. Yearly upkeep costs neared $100,000, covering wages for servants, electricity and heat, repairs, and land taxes. These outlays never let up and couldn't be dodged. The estate demanded ongoing vigilance to avoid decay. The marble surfaces called for regular scrubbing and buffing. The wooden interiors needed protection against moisture and twisting. The furnace system required frequent checkups. Even the outdoor landscapes yearned for perpetual tending. To handle it, Woolworth brought on additional help. A chief steward directed daily affairs inside. Several housemaids tackled the dusting and tidying. A cook plus assistants whipped up the daily fare. Garden staff preserved the greenery. In total, the place supported over 20 full-time workers. What he had created now needed a small battalion, just to keep running. In a way, the property held as much sway over him as he did over it. Lavish gatherings persisted, though they grew rarer over time. Woolworth learned the hard way that throwing soirees in a lavish palace didn't guarantee their triumph. Visitors showed up more from duty or intrigue than true camaraderie. Discussions stayed light and surface level. The meaningful bonds he craved simply didn't form. By 1917, his well-being started to falter in obvious ways. At 65, after pushing himself without mercy for years, the pressure of erecting the mansion and seeing it fall short of his dreams began to wear him down bodily. He grappled with ongoing tooth troubles that haunted him until the end. Recurring infections demanded endless interventions, and the discomfort turned meals into ordeals. These woes mirrored broader ailments in his body that physicians found hard to treat well. His disposition soured noticeably. Colleagues picked up on his growing short temper. He acted on whims and then doubted his choices endlessly. The self-assurance that had forged his vast enterprise was crumbling beneath layers of private letdowns. In the evenings at home, when rest evaded him, he roamed the echoing corridors of marble. The dwelling meant to crown his victories now resembled a tomb. Ornate chambers sat empty, areas meant for crowds that seldom filled, a testament to aspirations that rang empty in the end. Jenny observed her spouse's unraveling with a sense of powerlessness. Long before, she had cautioned that expanding their home wouldn't fix the deeper woes gnawing at him. He had brushed her off. Now the pair found themselves ensnared in the costly blunder he had insisted on. Early in 1918, Helena's fragility hit a breaking point. An utter collapse forced her into medical care at a facility. The family shrouded the matter in secrecy, shielding it from public eyes and even distant kin. Among the elite, such psychological afflictions stayed buried, never aired openly. Woolworth faulted himself inwardly, even as he denied any hand in her pain. He had driven her mercilessly toward a high society life she had no desire for. His demands had overwhelmed a spirit too tender to endure them. Yet owning up meant facing unflattering realities about his own character. Something he avoided at all costs. The outbreak of World War I offered Woolworth a fleeting reprieve from his domestic woes. The global strife disrupted his retail operations, with sourcing headaches. Goods from Europe grew scarce or unattainable. Costs for various products skyrocketed. Keeping stock levels steady and earnings intact demanded unwavering focus. The war shifted societal patterns, if only for a while. Established aristocrats, once dismissive of shopkeepers, now shared seats on aid committees with men like Woolworth. The emergency fostered alliances that ignored the usual class divides of calmer times. Woolworth gave generously to support the war effort. He funneled funds to the Red Cross and similar groups. At the mansion, he hosted drives that united tycoons and elites around shared goals. Unlike his past social flops, these occasions drew crowds with real intent. Not mere politeness or nosiness. The mission outweighed the entertainer's status. For a short spell, Woolworth tasted a taste of the belonging he had pursued for so long. Still, the rot at the heart of his household kept spreading unchecked. Helena stayed confined in the institution for most of 1918 and well into 1919. Physicians provided scant optimism for any real recovery. They described her state as permanent, requiring lifelong supervision. Woolworth stopped by now and then, though the meetings left him shattered. On certain occasions, his daughter scarcely knew who he was. At other times, she was clear-headed, yet resentful, holding him accountable for the stresses that had shattered her sanity. The remorse gnawed at him relentlessly, even while he maintained to acquaintances that his intentions had always been for her benefit. Jenny retreated even deeper into isolation. She passed her days mostly in her personal parlor, limiting contact to close relatives. The obligatory social displays her spouse expected had grown intolerable. She endured them only when unavoidable, without feigning pleasure anymore. In November 1918, Jessie wed Charles Mackin. The ceremony took place at the mansion, attended by hundreds. It ought to have marked a victory for Woolworth, with his youngest tying the knot to a solid, upstanding lineage. Yet it registered as another defeat. Jessie was breaking free, fleeing the grand residence that had turned into a prison. The union shifted Woolworth's attentions anew. He showered Jessie and Charles with presents and care. When Jessie conceived in 1919, delight surged through him at the idea of a grandson or granddaughter. Maybe the younger generation would value his accomplishments. However, his own vitality was waning sharply. Evidently, the persistent dental abscesses endured in spite of numerous interventions. He shed pounds, his vigor diminished. Colleagues observed his difficulty concentrating in discussions. His temperament grew erratic. He swung from ambitious visions of growing the chain of stores to profound gloom over his shortcomings. This cycle hinted at what today's experts could identify as bipolar tendencies, perhaps the very affliction that had unraveled Helena. In March 1919, Woolworth contracted a grave illness. Its origin stayed ambiguous, though it probably stemmed from his chronic mouth troubles. Germs invaded his blood, triggering septicemia that no existing remedies, antibiotics being undiscovered, could combat. He lingered for weeks in his chamber at the mansion. Physicians came each day, yet could do no more than ease his discomfort. The era's medicine in 1919 lacked effective means against widespread bacterial assaults. Woolworth faded in and out of awareness. In clearer intervals, he inquired on company matters and Helena. He fretted over the mansion's fate post-mortem. Who would uphold it? Would his girls wish to dwell there? Such concerns exposed his dawning realization that the lavish abode he had erected might not outlast him. Jenny kept vigil at his side, though she spoke minimally. Their bond had frayed too thoroughly for closeness. Even now at the end, she carried out spousal obligations but found no way to summon feelings long extinguished. On April 8, 1919, Frank Woolworth passed away within the edifice he had funded, with $5 million. Aged 66, the recorded cause was septicemia, fatal blood contamination from the unchecked bug. The burial rites were grand. Scores gathered, among them numerous elite personalities who had withheld true warmth toward him when alive. They honored his commercial successes while upholding the customary aloofness. Publications ran lengthy tributes hailing Woolworth as a trailblazer in merchandising who transformed retail for everyday Americans. His dime store model brought affordable items to everyday households nationwide. Billions in goods had flowed via his outlets. The residents earned a nod, portrayed chiefly as a testament to riches over refinement. Commentators referenced the marble from Italy and furnishings from France, yet suggested such opulence was commonplace for nouveau riche seeking to purchase prestige. Most reports omitted Helena. Households concealed psychological ailments, particularly involving eligible daughters from elite circles. Her non-attendance at the service got chalked up to ailments barring journey. The testament allocated Woolworth's wealth to his living kin. Jenny gained hefty holdings. Each of the three girls claimed millions. The merchandising network persisted via hired executives, though the mansion posed urgent dilemmas. Upkeep costs hovered near $100,000 yearly. Jenny desired no part of rattling around solo, in a venue meant for soirees she had detested. The daughters pursued separate existences with their dwellings. Soon after Woolworth's passing, relatives pondered the estate's future. Sustaining it felt like needless expenditure, with no one keen to occupy it. Disposal proved challenging. The structure dwarfed typical purchasers and carried a steep price. Through the rest of 1919, the mansion stood largely vacant. A minimal crew handled the essentials to keep things running. The grounds were still cared for, yet the grand spaces meant for throngs of visitors remained hushed and unlit. Jenny would drop by now and then to pick up belongings or sort out family affairs. Strolling those polished stone corridors in the absence of her spouse brought a mix of freedom and sorrow. This place had always been his vision, never truly hers. At this point, it simply posed a costly burden. In 1920, while confined to an institution, Helena passed away. The records cited heart failure as the reason, though relatives knew she had simply lost the will to live. The strain of her psychological struggles and the pressures from the family's legacy had overwhelmed her entirely. She was only 42. Her passing stayed under wraps, just a modest service for close kin, with no mention in the big city papers. The Woolworths laid their daughter and their family secret to rest side by side, wishing for both to fade from memory. Edna gave birth to Woolworth's granddaughter, Barbara Hutton, in November 1912. She would later emerge as one of the mid-20th century's most renowned and heartbreaking personalities. The shadow of the family's riches haunted her relentlessly, leading to broken unions, addiction issues, and the identical vulnerability that had undone Helena. Yet back in 1920, Barbara was merely a young girl, oblivious to the hidden torment woven into her heritage, passed down like an inherited defect alongside the vast estate. That Fifth Avenue residence embodied all the flaws in Frank Woolworth's idea of achievement. He figured grand riches and lavish assets would buy him admiration and belonging. He couldn't have been more mistaken. The opulent edifice he created loomed impressive, yet hollow and oppressive. Following the founder's demise, the F.W. Woolworth Company thrived under expert leadership. Trained executives steered the merchandising giant with the proven methods Woolworth had refined across years. New outlets kept sprouting up. Revenue held steady amid the booming 1920s. Still, rivals were closing in. Rival merchants had dissected his model and rolled out their own set-price operations. The nickel-and-dime approach had lost its edge as innovation. It had turned into commonplace strategy, adopted by countless firms. By contrast, the Woolworth Building, The soaring 60-story tower that reigned as the planet's highest upon its 1913 finish proved a sturdier legacy than the house ever did. The structure held the firm's main offices while pulling in lease fees from additional occupants. Brought mounting headaches. Jenny had zero brought mounting headaches. Jenny had zero plans to reside there. She relocated to a cozier, easier-to-run residence and abandoned the grand estate to gather dust. Upkeep for an idle property drained resources relentlessly. The company's directors weighed their choices. Selling it might work, but landing a purchaser seemed unlikely. Repurposing for something else. Its layout screamed private dwelling, making changes feel unfeasible. Tearing it down to peddle the plot. Wiping out a fresh-built marvel struck them as profligate. Through much of the 1920s, the place lingered vacant. A bare-bones team prevented outright decay. Landscaping got the minimum attention, but it was obvious the edifice served no real function anymore. Now and then prospective owners would inspect it. Affluent clans pondered if they could tweak it for themselves. Feedback stayed dismal every time. Overly vast, prohibitively pricey to run, and forever tied to Woolworth's dashed hopes for high society. It repelled them all. The 1929 crash and ensuing Great Depression dashed any faint hopes of offloading the mansion for a fair sum. Property prices plummeted. Those elite households that could have swung it during flush eras now fought to hold on to their current holdings. The Woolworth enterprise reeled too. Shoppers slashed their outlays overnight. The 5 and 10 outlets that once profited from blue-collar folks' pocket change now saw those patrons pare down to bare-bones buys. Earnings nosedived, margins evaporated. Clinging to a lavish unused pile made zero business sense in that climate. By 1931, the firm listed it for a steep discount. Turned into a glaring liability, a burdensome albatross shunned even at fire sale rates. Heritage advocates mulled if it merited safeguarding for its cultural value. The design impressed, no doubt. Cass Gilbert's name carried weight, but at just over 15 years since completion, it wanted the aged allure that elevates time-worn landmarks. Evaluating the mansion's artistic and cultural worth proved more challenging. Its rooms boasted fine workmanship and lavish furnishings. Yet did that truly confer cultural importance? Or was it merely an extravagant whim from a businessman flush with cash but short on refinement? Discussions dragged on, unresolved. In the meantime, the residence fell into disrepair from lack of care. Moisture seeped into certain areas, causing harm. Wallpaper started flaking off. The grounds turned overgrown without proper upkeep. By the middle of the 1930s, serious talks of tearing it down gained traction. The site's potential was high, even if the house itself held little appeal. Property on Fifth Avenue could be transformed into revenue-producing high-rises instead of a money pit. Experts in architecture raised objections. With Cass Gilbert's passing in 1934, the mansion stood as one of his last significant residential projects. Razing it would wipe out a key showcase of his style. The case had weight, but not enough backing to halt the plans. In 1937, a builder approached the Woolworth Company with a proposal to demolish the building and erect upscale residences in its place. Though the bid fell short of the land's estimated worth, it promised relief from constant expenses. The firm was ready to agree until advocates for saving the site launched a final push. They suggested repurposing it for public or educational needs over destruction, maybe as an art gallery or academy, leveraging the expansive areas while safeguarding the design. Their effort postponed the deal, but failed to attract a viable alternative. No organization possessed the funds to acquire and sustain it. The economic downturn had slashed donations. Cultural venues and academies were trimming operations, not adding sites. Global conflict disrupted matters further before the transaction could close. The builder pulled out, pointing to doubts over building limits and supply shortages during wartime. The property stayed on the market, growing ever more rundown. Throughout the conflict, parts of the structure served civil protection efforts. Some spaces hosted meetings for blackout monitors. Others stored vital wartime goods. Such arrangements were short-lived and offered no fix for the ongoing dilemma of the site's future. Jenny Woolworth had passed away in 1924, sparing her the ordeal of seeing her spouse's grand home evolve into an intractable burden. Her girls took over shares of the inheritance, yet shunned any role in managing the Fifth Avenue asset. Barbara Hutton, granddaughter to Woolworth, reached adulthood amid these events. At 21 in 1933, she gained a vast slice of the store empire's wealth, ranking her among the planet's richest heiresses. That fortune, however, unraveled her existence. She wed 7 husbands, all unions collapsing in chaos. Dependencies on liquor and medications took hold. Shameless opportunists preyed on her, viewing her solely as an endless well of funds. The cycle of misfortune that claimed Helena persisted into Barbara's era. In the 1940s, Barbara toyed with the idea of claiming the mansion. She toured the grounds and explored chambers crafted by her grandfather, yet quickly saw that residing there spelled trouble. The place harbored excessive shadows, shattered aspirations, and fractured fates. She backed away from any stake in it, deferring to the business to resolve the issue. The firm kept hunting for answers that proved elusive. Come 1950, the house had sat empty for almost 3 decades. Break-ins had marred certain interiors. Elements had breached the rooftop in multiple spots. Though the framework remained sturdy overall, repairs demanded heavy funding. Still, the puzzle lingered. Who would commit those resources, and for what reason? No functional purpose warranted the outlay. Emotional ties couldn't sustain it forever. An unforeseen savior appeared in 1954. New York University sought extra venues to handle the surge in students after the war. They required lecture halls, office areas, and staff lodging, all available in one spot at the Woolworth residence. Talks advanced carefully. The school lacked the capital for a full buyout near the initial price tag. The Woolworth outfit no longer sought top dollar. Their goal was just to shed the upkeep load. An innovative deal took shape. The university would rent the property, with a right to buy later at a discount, once they showed they could keep it in good shape. This setup suited everyone involved. The school secured room without a huge initial spend. The company cut losses while holding out for a future transaction. Work to adapt it started in 1955. Workers partitioned the opulent ballroom with makeshift dividers to create several classrooms. The dining area was repurposed as a lounge for faculty members. Sleeping quarters turned into compact offices. Though the changes prioritized practicality over aesthetics, they proved effective. From the late 1950s onward, students and faculty filled the mansion with activity. The elegant marble stairs endured the footsteps of countless individuals each day, while long vacant chambers now buzzed with classes, discussions, and administrative tasks. Once more, the structure served a vital role, albeit far removed from Frank Woolworth's initial dream.
Yet this setup was inherently short-term. NYU required contemporary buildings, tailored for learning, not retrofitted grand residences. The adaptations demanded major concessions, and upkeep expenses stayed steep. Soon, the university started designing fresh constructions to supplant the Woolworth estate. Come 1960, NYU opted against buying the property outright. It had fulfilled its role as interim quarters amid expansion, with dedicated campuses rising in other spots. The institution pressed on. The Woolworth Company returned to square one, an empty building once again.
At least the stint under academic use had kept the place intact and stalled further decay, though the core dilemma lingered unresolved. In the 1960s, fights to save landmarks grew fiercer. New York City watched helplessly as cherished edifices fell to urban sprawl. Experts in architecture pushed for safeguarding key 20th century sites, regardless of whether they evoked colonial eras or Victorian grandeur. The Woolworth Mansion emerged as a pivotal example. At just over 50 years old, could it claim protected status? Its design impressed yet echoed European influences more than forging a unique American identity. The site's importance stemmed mostly from Woolworth's commercial triumphs, not events within its walls. In 1963, the Landmarks Commission evaluated it. Their verdict split. The outer shell boasted real design value, bolstered by Cass Gilbert's prestige, but inside, NYU's modifications had ravaged much of the authentic ornamentation, damaged or stripped away. Ultimately, they withheld designation. This ruling cleared the path for overhaul. Demolition and substitution with profitable ventures now stood legal. Developers wasted no time pitching ideas.
Prime Fifth Avenue real estate promised huge profits. Towering residential towers could yield impressive revenues, viewing the mansion merely as a barrier to clear. By 1965, a firm acquired the site, openly intending to raze it. They secured approvals and set demolition for early 1966. Demolition teams planned to dismantle Woolworth's lavish home into debris across weeks. Advocates for history rallied, staging demonstrations at the gates, flooding media with pleas and urging officials to halt the process. Their efforts drew attention but lacked the clout to derail it. As the wrecking deadline neared, machinery assembled close by. Crews geared up to assault the outer structure. After years of abandonment and doubt, the mansion seemed destined for oblivion. Suddenly, a surprise bidder appeared. An investment syndicate tendered a deal, tempting enough for the developers to drop their tear-down scheme. Details stayed private, though the sum fell short of maximal development worth. The fresh proprietors revealed intentions to refashion the residence into upscale condos. Skeptics doubted its feasibility, considering the quirky layout and past flops at profitable repurposing. But the backers were confident in success. Renovations kicked off in 1967. The endeavor demanded a total rethink of the inner layout. The vast ballroom split into separate residences. Spacious sleeping rooms morphed into one-room flats. The marble staircase endured as a shared highlight, yet virtually all else underwent sweeping changes. Artisans labored to retain fragments of Woolworth's era touches. The Carrara marble defied duplication, so restorers handled it with utmost care. Portions of the wooden paneling endured, gracing accent walls in select homes. The front elevation returned to its inaugural splendor. The effort spanned 3 years and vast sums. The backers bet that affluent city dwellers would splurge on units in a storied mansion, quirks and history notwithstanding. Only time would prove if buyers agreed. Sales of the initial apartments began in 1970, drawing a moderately favorable reaction. Certain purchasers valued the distinctive design and its ties to the past. Many others were drawn to the prestigious Fifth Avenue location and the meticulous revival of historic features. However, not every space found a buyer right away. The transformation had resulted in oddly configured areas that failed to attract those seeking standard layouts. Over time, though, the property attracted occupants prepared to embrace its eccentricities for the privilege of residing in a slice of New York City's heritage. The residents endured, albeit in a guise that Frank Woolworth would scarcely identify. His opulent estate had been subdivided and marketed to outsiders. The chambers, intended for lavish social events, were now divided among numerous independent families. The once cohesive dream
had fractured into isolated segments, even as the edifice persisted. Its outer shell appeared largely unchanged from its 1916 unveiling. Those strolling along Fifth Avenue could still admire the limestone exterior and the intricate elements crafted by Cass Gilbert. The tangible form had outlasted the ambitions that birthed it. This shift to condominiums set a lasting precedent, enduring for generations. Today,
it functions as high-end living quarters, overseen by owners' association, handling shared spaces and upkeep. Residents rotate in and out, properties transfer ownership, yet the framework endures. Contemporary dwellers possess only superficial knowledge of Frank Woolworth. He constructed the home, amassed wealth through merchandising, and passed away within its walls. The fuller tale of familial sorrow and societal setbacks seldom surfaces in conversation. Property ads highlight the building's style and prime spot, glossing over the shadows that once permeated these halls. The grand marble stairway continues to command the foyer. Inhabitants and guests tread the identical risers that Woolworth mounted each day in his last phase of life. The Carrara marble has developed a gentle sheen from 100 years of foot traffic, yet it stays solid and impressively elegant. Certain vintage elements weathered the overhaul unscathed, including portions of ornate wooden walls. Select ornamental overhead fixtures and the core dimensions of select chambers persist. These remnants provide fleeting views of the estate's inaugural splendor, although they now exist in seclusion amid profoundly modified surroundings. The outer surface receives diligent care. The limestone frontage undergoes routine washing and fixes. Panes have been updated to contemporary equivalents that echo the classic look, but deliver superior insulation. Viewed from the roadway, it retains its 1916 character. Heritage advocates point to the mansion as a triumph of repurposing. It escaped the wrecking ball by evolving into a viable residential venture that covers its expenses. The design stays prominent, notwithstanding the total overhaul of its inner purpose. Detractors contend that splintering Woolworth's holistic concept into individual units obliterated the very essence of its importance. The sweeping areas central to the initial blueprint are lost forever. What's left are scattered architectural bits lacking the unity that lent them purpose. Each viewpoint holds validity. Survival safeguarded an element of the past, but the remnant diverges sharply from Woolworth's original creation. Whether such metamorphosis truly equates to authentic safeguarding continues to spark discussion among experts in architecture. The Woolworth merchandising dynasty took a divergent path. The five and dime outlets persisted into the mid-20th century, yet encountered mounting pressures. Bargain chains delivered steeper discounts. Upscale emporiums offered refined atmospheres. The Woolworth approach straddled an awkward in-between. The firm experimented with adjustments, bigger outlets featuring broader inventories, revised cost models. Ventures abroad. None revived the expansion that had enriched Frank Woolworth. The commercial environment had evolved beyond recognition. The final Woolworth outlet in the United States shuttered in 1997. The enterprise had declared insolvency the year before. 88 years following Woolworth's passing, his commercial realm had crumbled entirely. The brand lingered briefly overseas, but the domestic arm concluded. The Woolworth Building, the towering edifice that served as his alternate enduring legacy, demonstrated greater resilience than the storefront network. Its pinnacle levels have shifted to upscale apartments, preserving retail zones at the base. It endures as one of Manhattan's signature icons. Barbara Hutton, the granddaughter of Woolworth, who received a vast share of his wealth, passed away in 1979. At 66, the identical age her grandfather reached when he died, she left behind virtually no assets in spite of her inheritance exceeding $50 million. The fortune was squandered through disastrous unions, manipulation by consultants, and her personal reckless decisions.
Barbara's path echoed Helena's in eerily similar fashion. Each daughter of the family battled severe emotional turmoil. Each was overwhelmed by the pressures of legacy and riches that offered no true joy. Each passed away far too soon for what might have been a fuller life. This recurring theme implied a kind of malediction tied to Woolworth's wealth, one that ruined its beneficiaries. The Fifth Avenue mansion held little place in Barbara's narrative. She neither resided there nor made frequent trips. By the time she reached adulthood, the property had long slipped from family ownership. Yet the mental burden of being a Woolworth descendant weighed on her as heavily as it had on her Aunt Helena. Rumors of the mansion being haunted surface from time to time. Certain occupants and guests describe eerie occurrences. Echoes of steps in deserted hallways, doors creaking open on their own, and lingering melancholy in specific chambers that feels unrelated to current events. Doubters chalk these up to fanciful thoughts sparked by the structure's sorrowful past. Those who credit the supernatural propose that Frank Woolworth's uneasy ghost lingers within the edifice that never fulfilled his deepest desires. The reality remains elusive and perhaps irrelevant. What stands clear is the edifice's lingering aura, which many newcomers describe as stifling. The splendor bears a heaviness. The past looms large. Strolling through the shared spaces, it's hard not to reflect on the creator of this place and the price he paid. Modern New Yorkers have mostly overlooked Frank Woolworth. His name graces the facade and pops up now and then in tales of commercial breakthroughs. Yet he doesn't hold the enduring fame of Vanderbilt, Rockefeller, or Morgan. His wealth was considerable, though not built to span eras. His landmarks were grand, but they've shifted from their initial designs. The mansion endures as his most prominent surviving mark in home design. Sightseeing leaders occasionally highlight it for tourists. Design scholars feature it in analyses of Cass Gilbert's contributions. Property brokers tout it to boost the area's appeal, though scant few grasp the complete tale of its origins or the fate of its original dwellers. Woolworth erected the grand residence to compel elite society's approval and inclusion. What he wrought, however, was a symbol of the pointlessness in purchasing social ties. The home, meant to cement his kin's status amid New York's upper crust, instead highlighted an intruder's misjudgment of true priorities. The structure persists not due to any validation of Woolworth's ambitions, but through neglect. It only gained lasting viability once it ceased being a secluded chateau and morphed into segmented living quarters. This very shift toward longevity was precisely the defeat Woolworth would have dreaded. Those shadowy family truths have faded into obscurity today. Helena's collapse and confinement, the clan's unraveling, Woolworth's isolated end in spaces crafted for glory. Barbara Hutton's doomed existence. Such accounts linger in archives but seldom pierce today's consciousness. All that's left is the structure itself, the stone exterior, the grand marble steps, the remnants of ornate carvings that weathered the redevelopment. These tangible pieces linger on, even as the anguish that birthed them has faded. The residence has surpassed the gloom that shaped it. If that's triumph or mere endurance hinges on one's viewpoint. The edifice remains upright, outlasting nearly all other lavish homes from the Gilded Age. Yet it endures in a form utterly alien to its founder's vision. What began as a regal domain turned into multi-family dwellings. What served as a memorial morphed into mere holdings. What started as an aspiration dwindled to commonplace realty, traded via everyday deals. Frank Woolworth aimed to craft an eternal beacon that would demand acclaim for his feats. He achieved the permanence but utterly missed the mark on acclaim. The mansion persists, but as proof of wealth's boundaries rather than its